Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. All right, see folks pouring in. Thanks so much for being here and for choosing to be part of the conversation today about boosting employee happiness and retention with year-round appreciation. Before we dive in, just want to give a quick shout out for Women's History/Appreciation Month. Yesterday was International Women's Day, but we know that women are incredible and appreciation should truly be an everyday thing. So wishing all the best to the ladies and the gentlemen and gender non-conforming who support us out there. You are honored and appreciated, which of course ties in quite well with the appreciation theme for our community discussion. You are in for a treat for our panel for today. And for those who don't know me, I'm Asia Smith, she, her pronouns. I'm an executive leadership coach and community catalyst at ThinkHuman. I'm tuning in from the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, Maryland more specifically, but I know we've got an international crowd with us, so let's connect. I already see the chat lighting up with people connecting. And so keep this going. Let us know in the chat what your name is, where you're dialing in from today. I'm going to do a few shout outs to see who we've got in the room. Okay, so I said, okay, this is moving fast. I will just shout out the cities. We've got Texas and states too, Texas, North Carolina, Columbus, Ohio, Eugene, Oregon. I saw New York, Canada, more Texas, California, Chicago. Wow. Okay, and so we've got folks from all over joining us today. I see Nova Scotia. Okay. And I see folks, definitely a lot of international representation here. A warm welcome to those who just got a shout out and to everyone sharing the space with us today. We're all really grateful to have you here. Please take from this conversation whatever you need to serve you and your growth, and please don't let the growth stop here. We encourage connecting with a teammate, a friend, or a loved one, or perhaps even a coach or a therapist to talk through any of this so you can take care of yourself and feel empowered to continue the discussion in your community. It's great to still see folks interacting in the chat and introducing themselves. I'll shout out a few more. Let me just take a look here. I see Tijuana. I see Germany here. I see Pennsylvania, more Los Angeles, South Carolina, Seattle. Okay, India. Arizona, it's Atlanta. Okay, this is really great energy. Throughout the webinar, if you feel energized to say something on that note, as far as the energy is concerned, please don't hesitate to share, comment and ask questions. Your presence and contribution always make the conversation richer, and you might spark a thought for someone in the room, or we all might learn something from what you have to say. With all that being said, this webinar wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for our fantastic partners and the commitment and heartfelt work of our team and leadership at ThinkHuman to provide a safe and brave space for real conversations in the world like this one. So I'm thrilled to introduce ThinkHuman and our partners for today's webinar. Feel free to continue introducing yourselves in the chat. I see New York, Venezuela, so this is great, just seeing everyone interacting in the community. So to start, for our partners for today's event with ThinkHuman, we're a leadership development organization that supports HR and L&D leaders with implementing community-centered and experiential-based learning programs for leaders at all levels. And our programs are built to support a culture of belonging. The leadership programs that we offer, in particular our flagship programs, Leader Lab and Mini Lab, are designed to create mindset shifts and behavioral change over time that sticks, and it's with a heart-centered approach. Toward the end of the webinar, a poll is going to pop up. That way you can let us know if you're interested in hearing from ThinkHuman and our partners. But in the meantime, I'll just put a link in the chat if anyone is interested in scheduling. I see some people tuning in from Maryland, so just want to do a quick shout out there as far as the hometown. So next up, we have Blueboard. Blueboard is the experiential rewards platform of choice for the world's most loved employers. They make it easy for companies to give experiential employee rewards, incentives, and gifts from one-of-a-kind to once-in-a-lifetime experiences. So think skydiving, dining through Michelin stars, learning to blow glass, or chasing the northern lights. Truly unique experiences. And Blueboard supports enterprise workforces across 125 companies and partners with hundreds of best places to work to help them celebrate their people in a more meaningful way. You can learn more about Blueboard at blueboard.com. I'll put a link in the chat. I see someone who said hello from DC, so hello to you as well. Next up, we have Lever, which has recently merged with Employ. So both of those companies together in partnership are partners with us for this webinar for today. Lever and Employ are recruiting softwares that tackle the most strategic challenge that companies face, which is how to grow their teams. Their tools allow leaders to scale and grow their people and their pipeline and build authentic and long-lasting relationships and source the right people to hire. Lever and Employ also provide leaders with customized reports with data visualization, review offers and interview feedback and more to inform strategic decisions between hiring managers and executives. To learn more, you can visit lever.co or employinc.com. So I will put these links in the chat. We've got more. I see Houston, St. Louis, and I think I saw another from Canada, and I see Virginia. So hello to y'all as well. And last but not least, for our partners, we have PIN. PIN is the world's first global employee communication tool that helps companies cut through the noise to stay connected and calm through hyper-relevant communications. Whether it's the best way to approach a performance conversation, a nudge to order a gift card for an employee's birthday, or automatic outreach at key moments, like the first day on the job, or a promotion, or running your first one-on-one. PIN is there for workplace moments, big and small. To learn more, visit pinhq.com. I will put this link in the chat, and hello to New Jersey, Washington, California, and Jamaica, who I see in the chat. Alrighty, so thanks again to our partners and to our amazing panel, who you'll all meet shortly, for helping us bring this event to life. Before we dive into the webinar, we'd also like to share an artistic moment as we clear our minds and settle in for the conversation. We hope that this helps you feel grounded and open for today's discussion. So blessing us with their gifts today. So happy to have them back. We have the soulful Los Angeles-based duo with multicultural roots, Danny and Drew. Their song, Tell Me How You Really Feel, debuted on Oprah's own TV network. And for folks who have been to ThinkHuman webinars, you probably have seen Danny and Drew before. They've performed for many of our events, and it's always a treat to have them back. So without further ado, I will lower my tunes. And here to share a gift from their hearts, we have Danny and Drew. So go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much. One voice as tall as the Titans, we run with the giants, we fight with the heart of a lion. We stand for those who are broken, for the men who died before us, for the power of the vision unspoken. And if any one of us should die before we wake, I pray above for the strength that you would take. I'll be your legacy, your living legacy. Oh, plant the seed, oh, grant the key to the next generation. I'll be your legacy, your living legacy. Oh, plant the seed, oh, grant the key to the next generation. One land on the pulse of a nation, be hungry and faithless, spread light from a high elevation. One star, but never forsaken. Let the eyes of the lady, soft and pure as the gently awaken. If any one of us should suffer great mistakes, I pray above we keep the will to create.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Danny and Drew, for being here and blessing us with your incredible skills and beautiful words and music. Hi, y'all. I'm Natasha. I am the head of content at Blueboard, and I am so excited to be here for this conversation with y'all today. Danny, Drew, thank you so much. I'm going to introduce our panel. First up, we have Paige Carter, who is talent and business partner at Employ. We also have Stacy Nordwall, who is the head of employee experience at PIN, and Kevin Yip, who is co-founder and president at Blueboard. And we're going to be talking about employee appreciation today, specifically about building a culture of appreciation. And we're going to get into some strategies and some big questions. But I wanted to start us off with some experiences, some personal experiences. We have all had moments at work where we have either been appreciated in a way that really sticks and makes us feel great, or we have maybe not been appreciated in a way that we should have been. And I would love to just hear from y'all, each of you, one of these experiences, either a moment of workplace appreciation and recognition that really stuck with you, or a missed opportunity for appreciation that also really stuck with you, and a little bit about why those experiences resonated the way they did. And I'd love to start with you, Paige.
So I wish I could start this off positively, but I am going to share a negative experience, kind of how I had a missed opportunity for appreciation in the workplace. So at a previous company of mine, I was there for about 1.5 years. And up until this specific experience, I had been given appreciation. I was recognized for my hard work. I had been learning so much. It's kind of where I first got into technical recruiting. And then a new person was hired straight out of college who was the son of a friend of the owner. And the new person was started, and it kind of became almost a boys' club. They were allowed to do whatever they wanted. They could come and go as they pleased, didn't have to follow rules, processes, anything like that. And I thought, since I'd been there for a while, as well as one of my coworkers, that we would be leveraged as mentors. We would be able to help him grow, and it was not like that. And when we brought up our issues or brought up wanting to be mentors, we were kind of called mean girls about addressing our concerns instead of being recognized for the hard work we had put in. And we were literally pushed out of the company. I had a meeting with the owner one day, and it was the only role I quit on the spot without anything lined up because I did not feel appreciated. I did not feel recognized. And in my opinion, it was not going to continue to happen. And so, yeah, I quit without anything lined up for that missed opportunity of appreciation.
Thank you for sharing, Paige. That's a big miss, a big moment of making someone feel undervalued. And I just appreciate you sharing that with us. I'm sure folks have had similar experiences, unfortunately, and hopefully what we talk about today will give everyone here some tools to prevent things like that from happening. I'd love to hear from you, Stacy, about an experience that stuck with you.
Yeah, so back in my days at Culture Amp, where I was on the people team for 5 years while we scaled up there, one of the things we did along the way was we added a value that was amplify others, because we really wanted to try to incorporate into our DNA this idea of like appreciation and recognition. And one of the programs that we did was essentially like you could nominate, one of your fellow coworkers for this kind of Amplify award, and you get a fancy jacket that was like had the logo on it and everything like that. But what I did to try to make it special, because it almost turned into like a weird competitive thing where the production value on some of the like nomination videos was truly bonkers. So I went and one of our coworkers, my coworkers, Lexi, who is actually now with me at PIN, I kind of surprise videoed her, like I was nominating her live and telling her basically what I appreciated about her. And it really felt like, from the aspect of trying to embed it at like all different levels, that it was this effort of really getting to, making that part of our everyday experience, and like really thinking about the ways in which other people helped us be better. So for me, it was a pretty positive experience. And also we won the jacket, I'm just going to say.
I love that. You said a few things, Stacey, that I'm really excited to dig into a little bit later, including making appreciation part of the DNA. I love that phrasing. But I'm going to pass it to you, Kev, to maybe round us out with an experience of appreciation or recognition or lack thereof that stuck with you.
Yeah, I love the value amplify others. Anyways, that's still on my mind. For me, a missed opportunity of appreciation actually, helped kind of inspire the genesis of Blueboard. And so, I was in my first corporate job. I was a consultant, accountant, and I was put on a project. I ended up working 100-hour weeks for about 2.5 months. So 7 days a week, 12 to 15-hour days, very grueling. And over the course of the project, it was an opportunity for me to step up and really kind of prove myself, which I really wanted to do. But over that time, my personal life just fell apart, right? I gained over 20 pounds. My girlfriend at the time was on the verge of breaking up with me. I was just stressed, anxious, couldn't sleep. And at the end of it, I'm kind of just sitting at my desk and just kind of realizing all the work I've done and I'm just like, have no energy. My manager comes up to me and says, Kevin, amazing job. Thank you so much for your hard work. And then she puts down like an Amex gift card on the desk. And for me, while I really appreciated like kind of the nice verbal kind of appreciation, I think I had put in like over 400 hours of overtime, and it just made me think of like, this is like 30-40 cents per hour of overtime. And so rather than feeling valued, it felt really impersonal. It felt really transactional. And so the idea for Blueboard was like, I kind of came home and with my roommate, now my co-founder, and he was like, what's amazing is like there's so much intentioned energy and thought that went into like your manager recognizing you. I now know that my company spends millions of dollars. They had to go to get approval from HR. They had to pick up the gift card, and yet it still fell flat. And so the inspiration for Blueboard was, imagine if instead my manager had come up to me and said, hey, Kevin, I know you've been really frustrated with your health. I know you love boxing. Here's a boxing membership to the gym around the corner. Stop there after work. Or I know you and your girlfriend haven't shared a meal together in the last couple of months. Take her out to a nice dinner date. Same cost as the gift card. So much more personal and thoughtful for me that we thought, I would have had a 180 experience. And so while a missed opportunity, glad it happened. And so, inspired Blueboard.
I so appreciate all of these stories, and I think they've all teed us up so nicely to talk about the importance of building culture. We've kind of each described these moments of recognition that can make us feel really good, or these missed opportunities that can make us feel really bad. But what I'm excited to dig into with y'all is how to build systems that allow us to make this kind of appreciation and recognition consistent. We're coming off of Employee Appreciation Day, right? Which is a big holiday. A lot of companies rally around it. It's this great moment of like, we see you, we appreciate you. But we know that one day a year is not enough. Appreciation needs to be always on, evergreen. And we believe that, but it can be hard to talk about why that's so important. So I'd love to ground us there and start the conversation with why it is imperative that organizations build cultures of appreciation. And I'd love to start with you, Stacey.
Yeah, I think what you said reminds me, I had one of the things I do at PIN is create communications that people can send out to their employees. And we got a request for a communication for Employee Appreciation Day. And originally hadn't wanted to write it because I thought, if this is the only thing that they're doing, it's going to fall flat because people can feel that, okay, this is the one day you're highlighting it, but the rest of the 99% of my experience doesn't feel like I'm appreciated and doesn't feel like I'm being recognized. So I created the communication, but I also, for our customers to use, but I also said, like, it really needs to be clear that this has to be part of a kind of embedded, consistent strategy. Otherwise, it's not going to land the way that you want it to land. And I think, you know, that's partially feeds into the why. I mean, people know if there's a disparity between what a company is doing and that it kind of feels performative, or, you know, to Kevin's story, it doesn't really land the way that you want it to land. And I think that comes from the idea that like it really isn't embedded and it really isn't consistent. And so it's important from that perspective that you want employees to feel engaged, to feel appreciated. And you know, the long-term effect of that is you are trying to build someplace that people want to work and they want to continue working, right? So you want, you know, to build that employer brand that brings people into your organization, where you don't have to maybe spend as much time recruiting or sourcing, right? Because people are, you know, dying to work there, or not, you don't want to die to work there, but they're really excited to work there. And you know, that you have people who want to stay longer, so you're not having to backfill all the time. And like, there are all of these things that have true impacts into the business, where, you know, increased tenure, all of these things cost money, trying to onboard new employees and ramp them up. And you lose, you know, if you're not appreciating employees and recognizing them, they can go work somewhere else. And then you're also losing the kind of the institutional knowledge that that person has about the company. So there are all these flow-on effects that really kind of push as to, you know, why it's important.
Yeah,
So
no,
much wisdom. Go, Kevin, go.
yeah. You know, I kind of think of like, what is a company look and feel like without a culture of appreciation, right? It's thankless. It feels cold. It's demotivating. Like, people feel invisible. And as humans, we're social beings, right? We want to feel acknowledged. We want to feel like we belong. And we want to feel valued. And I think a culture of appreciation brings that out in a really organic and sustainable way. And, you know, research shows this, right? There's tons of research, right? If you feel appreciated, you're more productive. People that, you know, feel gratitude from their teammates perform tasks better. You know, I do feel like this feeling of appreciation individually is like a pretty fundamental human need. Now, if you think about that organizationally, right, when people feel appreciated, they feel like they matter. They feel like they belong. They feel like they're part of a team. They understand their role. And that can be really powerful for a business. That can be really powerful for a team. And so I think it's of utmost importance to kind of feel that like unity and cohesiveness of a culture.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off that and just say, I shared this with the panelists earlier that when I first started my career, this wasn't even a conversation that people had. You talked about recognition every once in a while, but like Stacey said, it was once a year. It was maybe at the end of the year when you got your bonus or something like that. And the fact that we're even having this conversation, we have so many people joining, to me is a step in the right direction of the overall institution, that there are so many people that want to have this conversation and want to learn about it. Is so inspiring and so empowering that people are interested, people are excited. We want to have these conversations now compared to 10 years ago, or sometimes even 5 years ago. I'm a sports person, so kind of in a sports reference, when a team wins and when they're recognized, they keep working harder and they keep winning. And I think you can refer that back to employee appreciation, is when you're recognized and when you have those wins, you're going to keep working harder.
That's great. I did want to elevate something that came out in the chat from Yvette. Yvette was talking about sort of the energy that goes into trying to personalize these types of experiences. And to me, that speaks to something that we didn't necessarily talk about as a panel before this, but this idea of HR bearing all of the brunt of appreciation and recognition. And when we think about a culture of recognition, that cannot sit only with HR. That is also about empowering your managers, your people leaders, right? To do this at scale requires kind of all hands on deck. And I just wanted to pull that out and share that perspective, because this isn't just like HR's job to do. The idea of culture is like building infrastructure and getting buy-in across all your leaders who touch different people so that you can recognize personally and meaningfully at scale. And so I just wanted to pull that up. If anyone has thoughts they want to offer on that, feel free to jump in.
I do have one. We had our sales kickoff not too long ago. And with employee acquiring lever, there were some concerns around company culture and how we were going to mesh those together. And our president of JobVite, one of our other business units, kind of had a call out to everyone at sales kickoff as culture is what you make it. The employees make the culture. So we can sit there and give you kind of values that you can go by and you can wait on those, or you can make it what you want to be. You can connect with other people across the business units. You can make the culture what you want. And I think that was a huge thing. And we've done really well about making it what we want to make it, having buy-in from everybody across the business units.
I think what comes up for me in that is, it is not only on the people in HR teams, right? Absolutely not. But I think there can be a lot of leverage and focus in figuring out who are the folks that you want to tell the stories about, and kind of, to Culture Amp's value, amplify those, tell those, communicate those across the organization. So you set an example and a precedent on like the type of behavior that the organization cares about, the type of way you want other employees to be treated. And so I don't think it is on HR, but like it really behooves like these teams to like tell those stories out loud.
Awesome. Thanks for going there with me, y'all. I want to talk a little bit about this moment that we're in, right? People, HR leaders are trying to support workforces through really trying times, coming off of a pandemic that we're still in, uncertain economic times, really tough financial decisions, distributed workforces, the heated debate around return to office. And I'd love to talk a little bit about how a culture of appreciation supports connection, because what we're hearing so much of is like this feeling of disconnection, this lack of connection among people, coworkers, people with their companies. So how can organizations use appreciation and recognition to build that sense of connection? And I'd love to pass it to you to start us off, Paige.
So I have a specific recent example from that. So we have something called a Values Champs Award that is peer nominated throughout the entire year. We do it quarterly, and then we combine all the winners at the end of the year. And we did an award ceremony on Friday for that appreciation, that recognition. They won prizes, some monetary giveaways, a trip is one of the bigger ones we gave away. But during that ceremony, it was very interactive. So every time we were about to announce award, we did kind of send out a questionnaire to anybody in the chat. The first one was sharing a fun fact about yourself. The next one is, how do you feel appreciated in the workplace? And the last one was just shouting out a coworker that did something good for you that week, or that has helped you in your role. And the chat was absolutely blowing up. People were loving it, learning new things about each other, being able to connect with people that they'd never connected to in the company. The feedback on that presentation and that interaction was more than anyone even imagined. And then our engagement team is actually compiling all of those answers into an email to send out to the entire company. So you can actually have those sitting in front of you for the rest of the time you're with the company, to be able to learn new things about each other. So it's not just kind of, it happened on Friday, it's going to go away, but we're kind of keeping that connection and sending it out so you can learn those new fun facts or learn how someone wants to feel appreciated, to have that connection through a recognition ceremony.
In like many of the conversations that we've been having with customers, HR leaders, what's been top of mind, one of the main things top of mind was, how do we get people feeling connected? And, we started asking, well, what does connection mean? And we found different answers across leaders. And so one of the things that we did is we kind of set out and did a bunch of research and set out to really define what connection means in the workplace. And there's really kind of 4 factors, if you will, right? There's connection to the company's mission, vision, and values. There's connection to your teammates and managers through like real relationships. There's connection to the work itself, right? Do you feel that it adds to the company? Do you feel inspired by it? And then lastly, there's connection from work that kind of fuels and feeds your personal aspirations. And so I do think recognition across all four of these factors can have a huge impact, right? Stacey, at Culture, I keep going to this amplify others value, right? But that value, amplify others, and recognizing people for that, that's tying and getting people more connected to the values and mission of the company, right? When you get peer nominated or recognized by a peer, or your manager says thank you to you, you're feeling more connected to those folks, right? In all of the above, you know that the work that you're doing is valued by your team, by the company, right? And then I think in some cases, if the kind of recognition or the reward helps fuel some other personal aspiration outside of work, right? That can be also incredibly powerful. And so I think recognition, I always kind of say, is like one of the lowest hanging fruit to like drive employee engagement, to drive employee connection. Yeah, and so I think it's hugely powerful. And so I think maybe for folks here, there's a lot there. You know, I think it's important to kind of gauge on what factor do you really want to move the needle in terms of connection, and then prioritize that.
And one thing that I've been seeing a lot lately is and over the past, year more probably, is the return to office, needing to get people back into the office. And I think, the drive behind that is a few different things, but I think part of it is, okay, well, we're not building connection, right? We need to bring people back into the office so we can build connection. And at the same time, there are, disabled employees saying, hey, remote work actually works well for us because we don't have to navigate these obstacles we would have to navigate to have an accessible workplace, and we're not getting accommodations we need. And, Black employees saying, hey, remote work actually works for us because we're not having to navigate as many microaggressions and biases and things like that. And so, I want to, highlight those experiences and also use that to say that building connection has to be intentional, and just putting people in a space together does not mean that connection is automatic, right? And so it is kind of what everyone's been talking about here of, thinking about these different levels or these different factors that you're going to use to think about how you build connection and, how you build appreciation and recognition into each of those kinds of relationships, whether it be something, like an employees recognizing and nominating one another, whether it be, for us at Penn, we start off, our big team meetings and our all company meeting with a temp check, which is like, hey, let's get a sense of where people are at. And we see you as people. We have, built into part of the agenda is recognition. So every day, every week we go through the agenda and have everyone call out, say their recognition for whoever they're recognizing. And we wrap that meeting with gratitude, right? So that is one way to build it in at that level. So it really is this, thinking about in a very intentional way, how you're going to build it into these different aspects of your business, because otherwise it just, if it's only like top down or bottom, like it's not going to land and it's not really going to be an integrated part of the culture.
That's an incredible way to kick us into the next question. I think everything we're talking about here, circling around intentional creation of connective spaces and intentional infrastructure building that supports appreciation and recognition, it can sound like a lot of work. It can sound like, oh, that maybe is going to take a lot. And what if I'm at a company where I don't have the buy-in to put in that effort to build these kinds of structures or to do this in a really thoughtful way? Like, we can often be blocked by organizational leaders, managers who just aren't bought in on the importance of appreciation. And I would love to hear from y'all what strategies people can use to change leaders' minds or to get that buy-in so that we can really build spaces that are intentional, really build infrastructure that is consistent and always on.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And in thinking about this one, I don't know if it's about changing leaders' minds as much as continuing to help them build deeper understanding around the importance and impact of this. And so, we obviously power recognition programs. And one of the big conversations over the last several months with HR leaders is, how do we build a business case for recognition, right? And it's not something that folks feel comfortable with, particularly in a kind of environment where it feels like kind of there's been belt tightening. The CFO is the main buyer. I don't know if people want to virtually raise hands and feel that like, the CFO or the finance team has, lagged on a decision or cut budget in some place. I probably got a bunch of hands there. But for us, it's really about creating a conversation with other leaders around what the impact is and what the ROI is organizationally, right? And so if we think about appreciation and recognition, we talk about engagement, we talk about performance, and we talk about retention, right? And it's not so much as, I think where folks get uncomfortable is, hey, we're not trying to make an infallible argument of, if we invest in this program, we're going to keep 37 more people and we're going to perform 30% higher, right? But it creates a dialogue on, okay, well, we will see some performance improvements. We will see retention gains over time. And this is a sizing of that, but it's more of directionally that the thought goes in there. And so some of the, one of the kind of the more probably like stronger kind of arguments around kind of building this business case is around regrettable turnover. And so I know a lot of folks track their turnover, if it's regrettable, non-regrettable, right? And there's a simple calculation on the number of people over the last year, right? The average salary, and then kind of the replacement cost of them. And so like, while that's just like a very simple formula, it helps move the conversation forward. I think another interesting thing that kind of comes up is, what's the cost of doing nothing, of not making a decision? Further disengagement, continuing to lose folks. And so I think that's an also powerful thing of like, hey, if we just stay the course, this is what's going to continue to happen, and we will have done nothing.
I can speak on that as well. I think the continue the course of not recognizing is huge. I think recognition also includes recognizing when employees feel burnt out, or recognizing how they individually want to be appreciated. And I have a specific example. We had a team last year that I had to recruit for a good amount of roles because the team was feeling very burnt out. They felt that the workload wasn't being dispersed as it should. They felt overwhelmed, and they kept having turnover from that. And it was kind of one of the teams that was the backbone of our company, the backbone of our customers. And we kind of partnered with employee engagement, partnered with my team, partnered with HRBP and the manager to really get down to the root of the issue. And we found that it was the burnout, and that it was the kind of work-life balance in that. And we came up with a plan to be able to disperse workloads a little bit better, add a couple more headcount to that team. And it has now been 6 months since I've had to recruit for that team. So just recognizing that they were feeling burnt out, I think, is such a small, simple thing that you can do with your teams, and fixing that. It's not monetary. You don't have to give away gift cards for that, but just realizing that they needed help and helping them.
And I think, to your point, for me, it's always when I'm trying to get buy-in or help people think about how to get buy-in, I really kind of lean back on like how well do you know your stakeholders, and do you know what's important to them? Because some stakeholders really want to know, data, numbers, and it can be, I think, to Kevin's point, really hard to say, we're going to do this and get this result, like to make a direct line between a lot of the things that we try to do in HR. But you have the ability to, whatever data you can leverage, if it's engagement, if it's length of tenure, whatever you have, to try to say like, okay, can we experiment with this and we'll look at these numbers and see kind of a before and after in terms of, you know, to just test it, right? Taking that kind of approach. Some stakeholders really need individual stories. They need a, you know, you need to story tell to them, right? So, you know, what kind of examples of stories can you bring up? Can you, you know, one of the things we're working at PIN is creating this entire employee journey map, right? So can you create and bring this journey map to them and say, hey, actually what we're finding is that because we are not really doing anything around the 1 to 2 year mark of someone's tenure, we're seeing a lot of people leave around that time. And I really think that if we, you know, do something for people here, that this is going to kind of like really re-engage them and bring them back into, you know, focusing on the company, and, you know, they'll stay longer. So it really, I think it kind of depends a little bit on knowing what's important to your stakeholder and helping them, you know, and framing it in a way that's really going to resonate with them.
That's such great advice, Stacey, and all of the panelists. I think what we're seeing a lot in the chat and in the Q&A, like budgets are really tight right now. So beyond just getting buy-in, like what are the ways companies can start really small if they need to? And I think one of the themes that we're continuing to talk about is consistency, right? It's like, whatever we do, can we do it in a way that will be consistent, always on, so that our leaders know what to expect, our people know how to earn recognition and appreciation, they also know what to expect. And it like, what are the tips for starting small, but making sure that we can stay consistent? And then building from there, right? Like, how do we then leverage that early success, those small successes, into unlocking additional budget and resources, growing the program?
So one of the things, you know, we found out early in the company is that some of the most thoughtful managers and organizations were giving experiences to their employees, right? They were using their own money. They knew their employees and teammates really well, and they would get them something when they did a great job. And I like to think, in hearing these stories, that like kind of recognition and giving appreciation in its highest kind of in the highest leverage is like, it's a manager skill, and it's a manager muscle that kind of needs to be kind of educated and trained. And so like, you can start verbal appreciation and really work to ingrain that in your managers through your manager training, right? And that doesn't cost anything. It does take time. You got to build it into the, you know, into the curriculum. You have to kind of get feedback on how, and kind of your feedback loop on how that's going. But that is takes time, but there's no kind of dollar cost to actually putting that into the playbook, if you will, right? And so I think that is really, really valuable and high leverage, right? You know, if there is a little bit of budget, I do think a values nomination program can be run very grassroots. You know, you pick your, you know, 4 or 5 values, you set up a Google form on an all hands at the end of the quarter. You say, hey, we're going to nominate folks to do value. You communicate that a couple more times, and then you see all of this great kind of stories across the organization pour in. And you know, maybe you select a few from the nomination pool and recognize them. Maybe it's a dinner, maybe it's, you know, something else, maybe it's a jacket, right? And then, you know, from the other ones, you kind of like, you know, disperse them to the folks that nominated them, and there's just like a great kind of aura that kind of emanates from a nomination like that. Also, very low cost, does take time, but low cost and a great way to get started.
Yeah, I think kind of tying into that, I very much agree about the manager thing, right? Because that's a lot of where you have, you know, somebody who has that regular touch point, who's going to know their, you know, the people better than, you know, an HR team or people further up in the company might know. And one of the things, so we're targeting that moment at PIN, where one of the things we're trying to do is help managers know when birthdays and anniversaries and some things like that come up, right? Because that's part of it, is just like the awareness. So sending messages and saying, hey, the so-and-so's birthday is coming up, their anniversary is coming up. Here's some ways you might want to recognize them, and they don't have to be monetary, right? I think the actual calling out someone's specific contributions and what what they bring to the team is often more meaningful, and also helps you not have to worry about a budget. And I think even in a different and I shared some things prior about like how you could incorporate that into meetings, and if you have a little bit of money, I think even doing some simple, what I like to call the surprise and delight moments that are just the random things, like Pi Day is coming up next week. I don't hope this won't ruin the surprise for anyone at PIN, but I'm sending a message where I'm gonna just let them go and do something fun for Pi Day, right? Preferably eat pie if that's what they're into. But it can also just be really simple, fun things like that sometimes too. Like it doesn't have to be something too, like it shouldn't be considered too heavy. I think when you think about where to start, like you can do some simple things that will start to move the needle, and you can do them without too much budget.
I completely agree with both of those statements. I love the manager thing, coming from someone who's not a people manager and having a manager. The difference between someone who does those small things of recognizing your birthday or your anniversary compared to somebody who is oblivious and has no idea is a huge impact. You can also start small. We have a shout out and celebration channel in Slack, or if you have Teams, and it shouts out anyone with new sales, anyone who's done well on the support team, anyone who closed out a deal, whose anniversary it is. I think that's super small. That's not costly at all. Also, shout outs on LinkedIn, I think are big, from peers, from coworkers. Shouting out on LinkedIn is going out to the entire world, anybody that follows you, your connections, and not just your internal company. So you get that bigger recognition for something that takes 5 minutes as a short write-up on LinkedIn, I think is a huge thing to kind of unlock potentially more resources starting small.
Natasha, you are a master at shouting people out on LinkedIn. I think we can get a template from you on how to do that. It was recently one of her team's first year work anniversaries, and she did an amazing post. Anyways, yeah. So I felt there was a culture of appreciation going on LinkedIn. So I think that's a really great one.
Wow, a little real-time appreciation from Kevin makes you feel so good. Those were all incredible points. One thing I wanted to just double click into is when we are getting started small, what are some tips for like benchmarking our success so that like we're evaluating our own success? I think sometimes we can lose sight of that, and that is such a powerful tool when we're thinking about growing and maturing. So any thoughts on best practices for like tracking success when you introduce a new program?
One of the biggest fallouts in larger organizations, when you ask them like, oh, do you have a recognition program? They're like, I think so, maybe, right? And so the simple idea of awareness is huge, right? And so how would you track awareness? Is that folks making nominations? Is that certain teams participating? Is every team or every unit participating, right? And so I think kind of at that high level, starting with like awareness around participation is really important, because if some folks aren't participating, then it's not necessarily widely adopted, and it can't be cultural if it's widely adopted. I think other things is just general feedback, right? And I think part of the benchmarking also is, you yourself, as the HR team are also looking for insights. Are there certain values being nominated more than others, right? Are the values that aren't being nominated, right? Is that actually a value? Or is that more of like, some words on a wall, so to speak, right? Are there certain teams engaging in more than others? And so I think part of like thinking about benchmarking is understanding what you actually want to get better at. And then that will help kind of drive from there.
And I think, I mean, we have touched on this a bit earlier, but also it's, if you have data that you're already checking, if that's through, you know, some kind of pulse survey, if that's through an engagement survey, if you're able to, you know, identify teams that may, or departments that maybe aren't doing as well, and then you're able to see, you know, an impact or difference there. Part of it is just, I think, gathering the information that you currently have access to, or even implementing, you know, if you don't do any kind of surveying, you probably should. I mean, you get some useful insight from there, and then really revisiting that over time as you're doing different, as you're trying different programs, implementing different things. And that Kevin pointed this out, and I've seen this in the chat as well, that consistency is really important across the organization. So if something is happening, you know, in one department and not another, people are kind of going to look over and think like, okay, well, I guess they really value that department, but not this department, or they value those employees, but not us. And so there really is also this aspect of consistency across the organization that could be a very good measure of, is this having an impact?
I'm so glad you brought that up, Stacey. And I think there is this theme that has been coming out in the chat of like a fear of inequity, or a fear of, if we recognize one person, won't other people feel less than? And I think this idea of consistency, of buy-in across your leaders is so important. Actually, before I recognized my direct report for her work anniversary, because it was a little bit louder maybe than we've been in the past as marketing leaders specifically, I checked in with my leadership team and I said, hey, this is something I'm about to do. Let me know if this, like, how this feels to y'all and how we can present this to the team, so that everyone who just had an anniversary and maybe didn't get that fanfare is like, oh, this is something that the marketing leaders are recommitting to and are going to do going forward. And so that's how I introduced it to everyone. I said, this is something I'm doing. This is something we're committing to. You can expect this on your next anniversary, on your next birthday, that we're going to be like loud about you. Of course, in the way that you want to be appreciated. And that's also very important. Not everyone likes to be shouted out in public spaces. So that's another part of checking in with your team. But those like alignments are super important to keep everyone feeling like they know what to expect. And it's really powerful. Paige, I saw you come off mute. Did you have something you wanted to share?
I was going to piggyback off yours, actually, is that I think also on your, like, the first day when someone starts, you can ask them how they want to feel appreciated, how do they want to feel recognized, and then consistently do that throughout the whole time. I think consistency is the biggest takeaway, the biggest thing that you can come across for any company, is making sure you have that consistency. And everybody is different, so making sure, even though starting small, just personalize that recognition and personalize that appreciation.
Awesome. I know we're getting close to time. There's still so many questions in the chat, so many questions in the Q&A. This is clearly a conversation that could keep going for such a long time. But I wanted to kind of wrap us up with just any final thoughts, key takeaways from each of y'all that you would love folks to walk away with today.
Well, I think I just said mine a little early on, that is that consistency is huge, and recognition starts small, and personalize it as much as you can. I know someone said in the chat, a handwritten note is something so small, so personalized. A shout out on LinkedIn if someone likes that public recognition, it takes 5 minutes. If they like that celebrations channel, it takes 5 minutes. Just those little small things to start building on, making sure you're consistent across the board, I think is a huge takeaway.
Yeah, I think for me, it's really, it's the idea of seeing how you can kind of build it into regular things. Like, so again, that consistency, like, is there a meeting cadence where you can always have some kind of recognition or shout out in a company meeting? Or is there some place where people can share gratitudes? Just finding ways to start weaving it in to kind of the day-to-day experiences of people, because a lot of those things, especially in terms of like budgeting, you know, they don't cost anything, right? And they're a good place to start to just start really embedding that. So that's what I'd say, is just to kind of look at some of the regular things, the regular cadences of the business, and find places to just weave that in.
Agree with what everyone's saying. I think I'll revisit on kind of one piece of just really investing in your managers. You know, incorporating that into training, having role plays on how to give great verbal recognition. You know, sometimes it can feel uncomfortable for folks. Just, you know, saying thank you, saying what they felt when you did something for them, like that can be, you know, that feels like a level of vulnerability that some folks, like, you know, just have a hard time getting to, and it requires that training. And so I think, you know, incorporating into manager training, you know, as an organization, you know, Blueboard this year in particular, we're really focused on investing in our managers and turning them into kind of great people leaders. And I think the entire organization and everyone in the company is going to benefit. And so that's why maybe it's definitely top of mind for me. And then the second thing is, you know, part of figuring out if things are successful in any program is also like people and you working to make it a success, right? It almost becomes somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so go out, find those stories that you want more of and tell them, right? You know, tell those stories, you know, find those leaders, you know, to tell them for you, right? You don't necessarily have to find it. You can just identify them and ask them to share it. And I think that, you know, also incredibly high leverage for a company as well.
So many great thoughts, including in the chat. Thank you all so much for sharing all of your own personal experiences and learnings and questions. We are going to launch a poll quickly. Just if any of y'all want to connect directly with ThinkHuman, Blueboard, PIN, or Lever Employee, feel free to respond to the poll. But I just wanted to say, like, this whole conversation, I think we've talked a lot about intention, the intention behind creating these cultures, but also like appreciation and gratitude just feel really good, and they can change the entirety of your day, of your week. Blueboard, I saw some questions about recognizing and appreciating remote employees. We have an appreciation e-card sender. It's free to use, super easy. And last week with Employee Appreciation Day, there was just so much activity around it. We actually have a love letters channel in our Slack space where we can see some of the messages that are going out. And it's just incredible to see. And like I would say, appreciation begets appreciation. It's beautiful to give, it's beautiful to receive, and that energy is like undeniable. Those are my final thoughts. It just feels really good to show gratitude and to receive gratitude. Any other thoughts from the panel before we jump off? Kevin, I feel like you have something.
I feel like you covered it, Natasha.
All right. Well, I feel like y'all. Well, thank you so much for such an incredible conversation. I know I feel uplifted. I hope all of you feel uplifted. I know that there's still so many other questions, so definitely feel free to reach out to any of us on this panel, connect with the companies directly. I know at Blueboard, we think and talk a lot about building effective recognition programs, what that looks like from kind of the building blocks level. We're always happy to talk more about that. And then for Paige and Stacy, PIN and Employee, so many good best practices coming out of both of those organizations. So thank you all so much. And I hope you have an amazing Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.